Hi, and welcome to another bonus episode of Creepy and Geeky. On today's episode, I'm joined by Ariel Powers-Schaub. She's a writer for Moving Pictures Film Club, and as of this recording today, she is the new administrative assistant for Ghouls magazine, where she is also a contributing writer. Welcome to the show, Ariel.
Hi, thanks for having me, Robert.
Yeah, thanks for being on. So what I like to do on this podcast is talk about two or more movies that are connected in some way. When I have a guest on, I like to have them choose the movies, or we work together to find a couple of movies we can both enjoy talking about. Ariel, you suggested a small list of movies, and from that, I chose The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Mm-hmm. Then I suggested we pair it with The Taking of Deborah Logan, which I had not seen before. And I had seen The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which is why I was like, okay, let's do that one.
Yes.
So, and then, of course, you made the comment of, you can call it the Something of Someone episode. And I was like, yes, that's literally what I was going to do.
It's perfect. It writes itself.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I like to come up with clever titles. You know, that one's, somewhat cleverish. Obviously we both thought of it. So that's
right.
Clever enough.
Two people think it's clever. That's enough.
And you're a well-established writer. So, it makes it even better for me, who's who's not a writer at all. So I'd seen The Autopsy of Jane Doe a couple of times before, but I'd never seen The Taking of Deborah Logan. And, other than title similarities aside, I wasn't too sure how similar they were. But after watching them both recently, they are very similar in not necessarily tone, but similarities in setting.
Yes.
And just the supernatural aspects. The Taking of Deborah Logan was definitely not what I was expecting.
That movie goes bananas.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. Because that one is it's because you think it's supposed to be a possession movie, like a demonic possession movie. It is a possession movie. It's just not necessarily demonic. I guess it kind of is. It's kind of not super clear on it.
Yeah, I've seen that movie. No, I agree with you because I've seen that The Taking of Deborah Logan maybe like 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
And each time I sort of forget what all the plot was because there's a lot of plot.
There's a lot,
surprisingly, for what you think is going to be a pretty straightforward like found footage possession movie, which I am 100% here for every day of the week. But you get into it and then it's like, you've got the telephone service and you've got this doctor who was hurting children. And now he's like, there were snakes involved and there's like a professor of the occult. And there's so much stuff in there that every time I watch the movie, I get to enjoy it again because I'm like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about the snakes or whatever. So yeah, that movie goes in a direction that you don't think it's going to, which also The Autopsy of Jane Doe does. So these were great double bill.
Yeah, it's with The Taking of Deborah Logan. It's almost like all that stuff should not fit together. It's there's so many different aspects of it that when you hear about it, when somebody tells you about it, you're like, what is going on in this movie? But yeah, when you watch it, it all clicks together in a weird way that it works on a and it's just a weird movie. Like, so I don't necessarily get scared or too creeped out by stuff. And this movie, I mean, it didn't scare me or anything like that, but it was just so wild. It was like, but it was a fun time.
I get scared, but I like to get scared and I try to get scared. Like I go looking for that. And I think The Taking of Deborah Logan is scary. Like, just the way she goes from like a proper older woman to all of a sudden like yelling and screaming and tearing things up. It's unsettling and it comes for you when you don't expect it. It's awesome.
Oh yeah. It's 100% unsettling. It's there's just so much going on. And again, for any listeners and everything, I don't have spoilers on my show. So if you haven't seen the movie, I want you to listen to me, but go watch the movie first, then come back and listen to the episode.
Come back. Yeah.
Because it's definitely, it was one of those ones that's been on my list for years because I've seen a lot of people mention it, but again, it was one of those ones that I thought was a demonic possession thing, and
Yeah.
I'm just not a big fan of that so much. And found footage is so hit or miss for me
Oh yeah.
that I try to I try to watch them when I can, but they get put on the back burner a lot. So this one really got put on the back burner for a long time. But the Autopsy of Jane Doe was one that I watched. So back in 2018 is when I got back into, well, really when I got into horror in a huge way, bigger than I'd ever been. Like now I'm a huge horror fan. Like all my movies are horror now. But yeah. So the Autopsy of Jane Doe was one of the early ones I watched because right when I was getting into it, people were talking about it a lot. And so I watched that one and was blown away by it. That one takes you, and like you said, it's weird and I kind of rewatched a little bit of it today just to make sure I was fresh on it. But that one takes about half of its runtime to slow build up into what happens in the last half, and the last half is just goes fucking nuts.
It really does.
Yeah, I think crazy.
Both of these movies, but the Autopsy of Jane Doe in particular, it's best to go into them not knowing very much.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's my preference usually anyway. I went into the Autopsy of Jane Doe. I had heard a lot of buzz about it, but I really didn't know what it was about. So I was just along for the ride as we're going. And I was right there with the characters as they were trying to figure out what was going on. I was too. And I think that made it a lot more scary than if, you know, spoilers, if you go in knowing she's a witch and she's on this revenge trail, you're waiting for that to happen and maybe wouldn't be as scary.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's something that so everybody's a big fan of Malignant. There's a lot of people who are huge fans of Malignant. I think you're a big fan, aren't you?
Yeah. I love Malignant. So I can't help it. I think
man. you just did a video on it, didn't you?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, I just watched that. Okay. Yeah, and I thought I was like, but I didn't like it.
That's okay.
No, but so my thing is that I called it from the credits, from the opening credits.
Did you really?
I did, because in the opening credits, they're doing a bunch of little medical documents and everything like that. And it talks about conjoined twins.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that's what's happening. She's being controlled by her conjoined twin. She's the one who's doing it. I didn't predict that it was like, Gabriel on the thing and she was going backwards like that. That was crazy, of course.
Yeah.
But because I called it, I just kept waiting for the reveal.
Yes.
And it took so long to happen that I was just like, this is just like, it just wasn't for me in that way. It was a good movie. It was crazy. Like everybody says that, like that last bit just is bonkers, but it took so long. And that run up to it felt so slow to me because I suspected that was the case and once it happened, I was like, I knew it. That it kind of spoiled it for me in a way.
That wouldn't be as much fun. I could totally see how that wouldn't be as much fun.
So with both of these movies, I had no clue. Like I said, with the Taking of Deborah Logan, I thought it was a exorcism style movie and was not prepared for basically the snake cult that it really was. She was possessed by like some kind of, she was possessed by a demon of sorts, but it was more of a snake demon, like something more otherworldly than actual demons.
Yeah, being summoned. So there was this doctor, Henri Desjardins, who is trying to summon this snake demon, and he has to kill 5 children to do it. He kills 4 children before he gets caught, and Deborah Logan's like good friend or maybe partner Harris is involved in that somehow, which also we find out. He's like a red herring for a while, and you're like, he's definitely involved, but how is he involved?
Right.
So then Henri comes and sort of possesses Deborah Logan to try to get her to kill a 5th child. So it's like she's possessed by a dead man who's trying to summon a snake demon. And, it's just a regular Tuesday. Right.
Just a normal Tuesday in the horror.
Just a normal day. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, so like what the between the two movies, the similarities that I noticed and everything were that they were pretty well self-contained. In the Autopsy of Jane Doe, it's mostly contained to the house of this father and son who are morgue workers,
like morticians,
medical examiners,
funeral,
that kind of thing. Yeah. So they work for the police brings in this body, this Jane Doe body that they find under the house, which is this body's completely clean. There's no, like, she was buried in the dirt, but like she's not dirty. She's very clean. She's got a little peat moss under her nails and stuff, but beyond that, she's very clean. And she seems like she's only been dead a couple of days, but there's no way that she could only be dead for a couple of days because she was underneath a house. And so the father and son, they have to do the autopsy for her, and it's all in the underground of their house. And so everything is super self-contained, mostly in the, I guess, autopsy room. And whereas the taking Deborah Logan is mostly around her home, which is out in the woods, kind of out far away, where she was a what's it called, switchboard operator. She had like a specialty switchboard operation that she did in the 50s and 60s, and she helped keep that town like connected. And so
they both have important roles in their community in that way. Deborah Logan with her switchboard business, and gosh, I can't remember his name, but the mortician in the Autopsy of Jane Doe, Tommy, are both Tommy. Their communities are counting on them for these services that ultimately lead to their demise.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing with Deborah Logan. By the point we see her, she's suffering from Alzheimer's, and it's been a while since she's needed to run the switchboard because that stopped being necessary
being a thing.
Like the 70s and 80s. So, she's retired and just living at home, and her daughter is concerned about her welfare. And so a documentary crew, university documentary crew, comes in, pays them some money, helps them with their bills and such, and wants to document Alzheimer's, somebody going through Alzheimer's disease. And that's when shit hits the fan.
Yes. Very much so.
Yeah, it goes downhill very quickly. But yes, they both have both Deborah Logan and Tommy, the morgue worker. They both have important jobs that they do for their communities, or had important jobs that they did for the communities. And so they're very tied to their communities as well. And whereas one is taken over by something, the other one is, I guess, attacked.
Yeah.
So the body that they bring in Jane Doe, the Jane Doe is what they find out literally halfway through, right around the 45-minute mark, is they peel back her skin and find out that she's got like runes and everything else written inside of her. And that's when shit hits the fan for them.
I love that reveal. I love that reveal.
Like, because there's such a tense thing going on in that movie that they keep finding things. Like, first it's like, I don't even remember, but like they find like the plant, the Jimson weed inside of her that helped paralyze her. And they find her, first they find out that her wrists and ankles are severely fractured. Like she'd been tied up, but she's got no ligature marks. So there's lots of these little signs of assault to her body that you can't tell from the outside, but everything's on the inside. And as they literally peel back the layers, they find more and more strange stuff going on. And
I could never have guessed that we were going to have spells tattooed on the inside of her body. Like, give me cursed skin every day. Now I want it in more movies.
Right. Oh man, that's just it's crazy. You don't get a lot of that. Like even just ritualistic even tattooing as a story thing in a lot of
Not a
movies.
lot.
No, it's interesting. You would
So
think
let's
that
do
would be
more of
kind
that.
of more of a thing, right?
Yeah.
Let's start amping that up a little bit more.
Speak it into existence. Yes.
Somebody get on that. Because it's not going to be me.
No, or me.
I'll
We'll
talk
just
about
wish
it
for
afterward.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll write about it.
So.
Something else I noticed that was a similarity between these two
Yes.
that I hadn't really thought about before was the parent and child relationships.
Oh, yeah.
In The Taking of Deborah Logan, her adult daughter, Sarah, is caring for her in a very active day-to-day way, helping her with her Alzheimer's. And in the Autopsy of Jane Doe, Austin and Tommy are working together, and Austin's not taking care of Tommy in such an explicit way because Tommy is still able to care for himself, but he's grieving the loss of his wife, Tommy's wife, right. Austin's mother. So Austin is there for Tommy in a lot of ways that maybe in a different circumstance he wouldn't need to be. So both these adult children feel really connected to their parents and want to help them and be there for them, and then, end up going along these crazy, dangerous rides with them. But that was something I hadn't thought about before that I noticed when I watched these two back to back.
Yeah, that's yeah, I didn't even think about that. You said it just now. Yeah, it's definitely well, and with the Taking of Deborah Logan, her daughter in that is only just recently taking care of her, because it's definitely a plot point, because the daughter she has a relationship with somebody that seems to be deteriorating as she's taking care of her mother. She's talking to her on the phone, trying to say, oh, I need to take care of her. I'll try to be home as soon as I can. And that so there's on both sides, there's kind of these strained parent-child relationships, not super strained, but just a little bit enough that it causes a little bit of friction for sure. And
it does.
And that I think definitely plays into both movies. Because in Autopsy of Jane Doe, like you said, Tommy's grieving his dead wife and Austin's dead mother, and they're both kind of trying to move on and do their thing. And whereas like in Taking of Deborah Logan, the daughter is trying to hold on to her mother, despite already having moved on, with her own life. She's still trying to hold on to what's left of her mother and her memories and her life as it was before. And so it's an interesting on both sides to see the parent-child dynamic.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, because Austin feels this pressure to work at his dad's, funeral business, or gosh, I don't know if they do funerals, but the preparing of the corpses, whatever we call that professionally. Right. And Austin doesn't really want to do that. And we learned that through a conversation Austin has with his girlfriend. And so you're right, there is tension in those relationships. As much as Austin and Sarah care for their respective parents, they're also kind of like, ugh, I wish it wasn't this way, which is, relatable to a lot of people with families. So that struck me this time when I watched it.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's with both of those movies, that you can look at it as, a parent or a child or whatever. And if you have that kind of relationship or have, similar relationships, you can definitely relate in that way. And that's what I really love about good horror movies, is that a good horror movie is a movie that can exist without the horror aspects of it. That if you took some of the horror out of it, you could also see the movie on another level. Whereas with, Jane Doe, you're looking at a father and son navigating their relationships in the wake of the mother's passing. And as the son wants to go on and become his own man, while the father is also trying to hold on to him and trying to pass on his knowledge, because he sees that his son can do this, but the son is resisting it. And in Taking It to Deborah Logan, you've got the daughter who's already moved away, and then the mother's starting to deteriorate so much that she needs somebody. And as much as Harris, the red herring, is there to help, he can't be there all the time. And you that having to go back to that parent and having to take them when you've already left and gone on with your life, and then having to sacrifice what you have in your life to then go take care of that parent. There's so many on both of these. There's so many layers to these movies that, taking out the horror aspects, there's these just good dramatic moments and stories that go into them that make these movies so much more deep than just surface horror movies. And then just add in the horror, and then it just elevates it even more. So
that's absolutely true. Both of these movies have a strong foundation of characters that we care about, and tension in the plot, and conflict that we want to see resolved. And then we put the horror on top of it. And it's just a beautiful layer cake of media.
Exactly. And that's what I think the best horror movies do. Like, and I would say, generally speaking, there's a lot of great horror movies out there, and they do that well, where you get the generally great human beats of everything, the human stories, and then you've dropped in the crazy nutso horror stuff that just makes everything go to hell. So
yeah, I think I also have a place in my heart for a lot of like the more empty schlocky stuff, but you're right. Yeah. Like a lot of good horror is built on a strong story in and of itself. Yeah, that's absolutely
and there's
true.
Nothing wrong with the schlocky stuff.
I love all of it.
yeah, most definitely. I'm a big horror comedy fan myself, so I like a good Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Love it. Yes.
Shaun of the Dead, Cabin in the Woods, that kind of thing. That's Scream, obviously.
Have you seen Behind the Mask?
Yes. Oh, I like that one. I wasn't super hype on it, but I did like it.
Okay.
I definitely need to rewatch it. It's one of those ones, like, I tend to, so even if I'm not too big on a movie when I first watch it, I try to revisit it again later, just so that in case, maybe I wasn't in the mood, maybe it just didn't hit me right that day, or whatever. I've done it a few times where there's been movies that are just like, on a second viewing, I'm like, okay, I really like this one a lot more than I did the first time. And then there's other ones that I'm like, oh, I don't like that one. Like that one is even worse than I thought it was. But it's rare. Most of the time I like them a little bit better. Sometimes it's a movie that I'm just like, I'm still just meh on. It's obviously not one that I really care for.
I try to do the same thing.
The horror community will hate me, but I'm not a big Shining fan. So
that's okay.
Yeah.
Just what you like.
The major problem that I have is I'm not a big Jack Nicholson fan. He kind of plays the same character all the time. He just plays Jack Nicholson going crazy.
That's true. You're not wrong about that. And it's hard to avoid, you can't really watch The Shining without and like fast forward through his parts. That's most of the movie.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like, maybe if I'd seen The Shining like when it came out and like had gotten an appreciation for it, like at least early on, but I'd seen other Jack Nicholson things later on. And so by the time I went back and watched The Shining, I was like, so he's just doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Oh yeah. That probably did have an effect, because I think it was probably the first Jack Nicholson thing I saw.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a bad movie. It's shot incredibly well.
Of course.
Props to the cinematographer for sure. But and the tracking dolly shots are like fabulous. And I've actually been to the Stanley Hotel.
I'm so jealous.
I used to live in Colorado, about a half hour away from there. And so we went one time, and I actually got to walk around, and it was after they had done the miniseries version of The Shining there. So
cool.
So they actually have like a model of the overlook inside there. They have like this little area that had a section devoted to The Shining, the miniseries, and the movie and stuff. So it was pretty cool. But since they'd actually shot the miniseries actually at Stanley Hotel, then they it was neat to get a little bit in there and check out some of the history that they had. So.
Yes, that's on my bucket list for sure.
But yeah, so back to these movies.
Yeah.
So now that we're talking about it and everything, I'm also seeing the similarities between, I guess, witchcraft and cult stuff. Yep. I mean, we've got in the Taking of Deborah Logan, you've got this doctor who was involved in some kind of snake cult thing going on, and in Jane Doe, you've got this body who's a vengeful witch wreaking havoc upon, after her death. Like it's so you get this kind of, it's not even necessarily I mean, it is supernatural, but it's very steeped in, both of them are steeped in folkloric and witchcraft cult type stuff. So you get a lot more of that in both of them. You're getting kind of more folk horror, not in terms of setting or anything like that, but you're getting it in the outer context of it all. And which I could
have like a prequel of each that would be folk horror.
Yeah. And maybe Robert Eggers' The Witch would be considered a prequel to
it's a spiritual prequel.
There you go.
Double bill that. See if it works.
I think that would actually work out
so.
pretty well. But yeah, so I noticed that upon my rewatch today, like thinking about the witchcraft and folkloric aspects of that, which I haven't delved too deep into those. I've watched a few. I've watched the original Wicker Man. Midsommar is high on my list of movies. It's one of my favorites of all time.
I love Midsommar. Yeah.
It's such a good movie. But I haven't delved too deep into folk horror yet. But it definitely felt like there were aspects of that going on with both of them.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too, now that you're talking about it, I'm thinking of both of the stories are driven by a dead person.
Oh yeah.
Driving the conflict forward. Jane Doe is maybe undead, but her spirit, her soul in her body is trying to enact revenge and go scorched earth. And Henri Desjardins in the Taking of Deborah Logan his soul is trying to become a snake demon or whatever. So not only are they both kind of folky, occult driven, but they're specifically being driven by spirits of dead people who are trying to meet some sort of like supernatural need.
Right.
And these movies have more in common than I thought.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's not until we start talking about it that I'm like, oh yeah, look at these connections.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the titles. Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, that's that's actually really good. Because they're very much driven by, like, because everything that's going on with Deborah Logan is motivated by Desjardins, the spirit of Desjardins trying to come back.
Right.
Because that's the whole purpose of him getting this last girl, is to come back to the earthly plane and become some kind of snake god type thing or whatever.
I don't fully understand, but
yeah, that's the part that's kind of confusing. It's like, what are you doing? What's going on?
Maybe he doesn't even know.
I think really the movie was just trying to get us to the point where you can just see Deborah Logan just snacking on that kid's head,
unhinge the jaw, eat the kid. And it's something I noticed
scene alone.
This time I noticed earlier in the movie, she's eating like a Hummel figurine. And I was like, oh my God, that's such good foreshadowing. Like I didn't even that. Yeah, she's like, because they point out she has her little Hummels and she's real particular about them. But then in one scene, she's like shoving a child one down her throat. And Sarah has to stop her. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah.
Oh man.
Anyway,
all right. I'm definitely gonna have to pay attention to that. No, that's awesome. Oh, I love that when you go back and watch something again and you like, and that's why I do like to go back and rewatch something, especially something I did like, because you do get to find these other layers of stuff that you didn't notice before, the little things like that where you're just, oh, you're sneaky. They were great movies. I'm when you suggested, because you suggested a small list of movies that you liked, and I think most of them I'd either seen, like I think all of them I'd seen or had.
I don't even remember what I suggested.
You suggested Caveat, which is a new one.
Oh, yeah.
Hell House LLC, and those are the two I haven't seen yet.
Okay.
The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which I really enjoyed. The House of the Devil, which I was kind of soft on. I didn't really get a whole lot out of that one, so that's why I was like, I'm not a big fan of that one. Paranormal Activity, I like that one a lot. I like the franchise as a whole. I think that they kind of spin its wheels.
Yes.
As they get farther and farther in. They keep trying to like push it out a little bit farther and like only tell you a little bit each time.
Right.
And, which is fine, but if you're expecting me to like pony up every time,
it's a lot to sit through for not a lot of lore, but
right.
You know,
I do like the lore of it.
I do too. I like what they do with it.
Yeah. Did you see Next of Kin?
No, not yet.
Oh yeah. That one's okay because it kind of mixes a little folk horror into it. So
well, I love that.
Yeah. And then the last one was House of a Thousand Corpses, which I've seen, and I don't dislike it. I find that Rob Zombie's movies are a little too nihilistic for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
But out of that trilogy, I tend to like the second one better.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
Rejects.
That seems to be the thing. I love House of a Thousand Corpses, but that list, apparently I wanted to give you a variety because that a lot of those don't go together.
Yeah, no, and that's what you said. You said you wanted to offer me a variety.
Okay.
So, and I think you were trying to keep it open to me to pair something that I had, because we had talked about it a little bit beforehand. Because literally before I had posted about having people come on, you and I don't think you and I even followed each other, or
nope, I don't think so. Somebody I follow retweeted your tweet about podcast guests, and I was like, cool, another horror podcast.
Yes, which is great because I was like, I need guests because my kids are my kids normally are my co-hosts of sorts for each episode, but they both work, and my daughter's going to college, so it's kind of hard to schedule them to not only just record, but to get them to watch all the movies. To get caught up on stuff. So we're trying to do it at least one episode a month with them, and then I try to get guests for at least one other episode a month, so I can have at least two podcasts out per month. So
that makes
sense. We'll see how that works. I have to lock down some more guests here and there. But yeah, no, you gave me a great list. I've heard good things about both Hell House and Caveat. But I had
very different.
Yeah.
But Hell House LLC is another found footage, and I'm a big found footage junkie. But I think it's really well done, good and scary, about a haunted house, like a haunted house attraction at Halloween.
Right.
And
that one would probably pair well with Haunt, I think.
Yeah, I just got so excited when you said that. Yeah, would pair well with Haunt. So Haunt is one of those movies that I didn't like it that much the first time I watched it, but every time I've watched it since, I like it a little bit more. I think I had to get past the ending. I didn't really like the ending very much, but I let that go. And like the movie's good and scary. And
that's that I was the same way. Like I've only seen it the one time, and I was just like, okay, this is okay. This is pretty good. And then the ending's kind of like, what? What's going on here?
Yeah.
So so anything with like haunted attraction type thing like that would probably be a good one to like pair with that one. Just I think that would have been a good one too. I did think about that, but as soon as I saw Autopsy of Jane Doe, I was like, that's the one, because that was the one I really liked. So
it's so good, and I do feel like a lot of people have seen it, but I don't hear as much talk about it. Maybe that's just because it's newer. but I haven't read a lot about it or heard a lot of podcast episodes about it. So I was really excited to get to talk about it because it's not one of those movies that's been talked to death.
Yeah, and that was the interesting thing for me too, because like I said, when I first jumped into horror pretty hardcore, that was the one everybody was talking about. And I think it was probably because it was still pretty new around 2018. I'm not quite sure when it came out exactly, but it was one that everybody was talking about and was like, but they were talking about it like it's one that not a lot of people had seen yet.
Yeah.
And so I think that's still possibly the case. There's still a lot of people who haven't seen it because it's definitely a lower movie. It's not one of those ones that gets too buzzed about. Like you said, it's not getting talked about to death on podcasts. And that's what I'm trying to do with this one too. Like with my podcast is, you know, talk about the big ones, but also, you know, start highlighting some of the smaller ones. Maybe not so much of the really weird stuff like Vinegar Syndrome and Severin put out, that kind of stuff, because a lot of that stuff I don't get interested in those. They're so overly schlocky or bad that I'm like, I can't find anything redeeming to talk about.
Well, and then first of all, you'd have to get your hands on them, and then all the listeners would have to get their hands on them.
Exactly.
And that's hard too.
Yeah, and that's what I try to do with this too. Is I try to do stuff that's on streaming if I can. I own a lot now that I can just easily watch myself. So I do need to I forget to do this every episode, but I do need to highlight where people can find things. So the Autopsy of Jane Doe you can find on Shudder, and the Taking of Deborah Logan, I believe when I watched it was on Amazon Prime.
Okay. I think it's also on Shudder right now.
It might be.
Okay. I hope I didn't say something wrong. I thought I watched them both on Shudder.
Right. It's possible. Definitely go search it out, everybody.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm just trying to think more about these two, their similarities, and you know, because one's found footage, one isn't. Right. So in that they differ.
They both had creepy electronics that added some horror elements. So in the Autopsy of Jane Doe, there's the radio that keeps playing the Let the Sunshine In song and like going all staticky and playing things that aren't news that isn't accurate. And then in The Taking of Deborah Logan, the switchboard helps them solve the mystery as Deborah's, you know, trying to connect a wire, and then they figure out whose number that was, and it leads them to Desjardins. But I thought that was interesting too. And both are older pieces of technology. So it wasn't like, you know, we see newer movies with newer technology taking over because everybody's scared of these sci-fi situations, which is totally valid. But, you know, an analog radio shouldn't be so scary, and a switchboard shouldn't be so scary. But here they are making the horror happen.
Well, and I actually like that a lot. Now that you bring that up, that, you know, we're looking at both of these in terms of, in a way, they're both kind of outmoded technologies. The switchboard, especially, we don't need switchboards to connect to each other. Right. And, you know, with the radio, sure, everybody's got radio still, but most people don't use radios too much. Everybody's got streaming services for radios, you know, so everybody's got Pandora or Spotify or whatever. And so you can choose your music. You don't necessarily have anything like that. So it's interesting to explore that aspect. It's definitely, I think it's more explicit, like you said, in Deborah Logan, that the switchboard plays a role in advancing the plot. Whereas with Jane Doe, the radio is more of a creepy add-on to the atmosphere.
That's true.
It's there's moments where the lyrics of the song or the or the announcements on the radio kind of play into the plot, but for the most part they're just creepy add-ons, which is in itself fun and exciting to do that. But it's interesting that you brought that up. I didn't think about that as an aspect of the movie. But that's a good call. I like
And
that.
They both kind of have a gotcha ending, or like a little stinger at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Great double bill.
Yeah, no,
Truly.
it turned out a lot better than I had anticipated when you brought it up, for sure. And I was like,
the something of someone.
The
There's
something
so
of
much
someone.
more.
Oh man, yeah, no, that it worked out really well. And for anybody who's listening, definitely give this a good double bill watch, because
Absolutely.
it's fantastic. The similarities you notice, the differences that both complement each other in lots of ways.
Yes.
And like we said, one's the found footage, one's a traditional, regular, claustrophobic. Because with Deborah Logan, it's contained, but they're throughout the house and the surrounding area a little bit. So you get outside, whereas with Jane Doe, you're very contained within the bottom layer of this house where the offices are, and the autopsy room is, and most of it exists in the autopsy room. And so you get this very tight, very claustrophobic feeling, where at least with Deborah Logan, you get outside once in a while, you can kind of breathe, stuff's going weird, but it's happening throughout the house and throughout the landscape. And so, and towards the end of Deborah Logan, they like go into these caves. So,
right.
These mine shafts. And so it's, you get, which then again becomes a claustrophobic, nightmare, especially when the lights go out.
Dude. Yeah. That's true. That's true.
And that's both of them have that situation where lights go out. They're in these dark, contained areas that just everything gets amped up. It's crazy. These movies paired really well. I was actually very surprised.
Yeah, me too. They both have some good body horror as well, for anybody looking for that. So we got claustrophobia, we got dark, we got body horror, we got supernatural elements. Listen, there's something for everybody.
Exactly. And you pair, and if you like found footage, you got a little found footage,
right?
Like traditional, more traditional style, horror stuff. You got that in Jane Doe.
Yeah,
it's a nice little horror sandwich there.
Yes, we could write the quotes for the box set.
The Something of Someone box set. There you go.
Right? Why not?
We'd have to maybe add in The Exorcism of Emily Rose, or a couple of other random stuff. That's another one I have not seen, but I've heard good things about.
Well, now I want to go mining for more of these.
Right. So so I know you're a big found footage fan, and I know you are a big Blair Witch fan.
Oh yes. Big time.
So you like to talk about that, you said, any chance you get?
Yeah, I'm kind of like, you can catch me on a tree stump outside just talking about the Blair Witch Project. I do. And so I was 12, I think 11 or 12 when the Blair Witch Project came out. And
okay, you're making me feel old. Okay, go ahead.
It's just the truth. And people, when I talk to people younger than me about this, they don't really understand that the internet, it was not like it is now. Yeah. There was enough internet for us to be scared of the Blair Witch Project. Right. And the Blair Witch invented, ARGs in the way that we think of them today. I feel confident in saying that. But there wasn't enough internet for me to understand fake things. And when you're 11 or 12, you understand the difference between pretend and real. But my dad and my brother just kind of We're like, hey, we're going to the movies, get in the car. And I was like, sweet, love going to the movies. And then we sat down and watched this thing, and I had never seen anything like it. And I was kind of like, well, I don't think my dad would take me to watch actual people getting hurt, but I don't understand what else this could be. So
he took you in blind to go see
totally.
This?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Well, and hey, here I am today. So on the way home, they explained to me that, it was just a movie. And I was just like, I since then have been chasing that fear, like trying to get as close to that fear again as I can. I'm like, oh, can I find another movie that makes me feel the way that the Blair Witch Project did when I saw it in the theaters and I didn't know what the hell was going on? Yeah, kicked off a love of folk horror and found footage, and yeah, never stopped.
So I was 25 when it came out, so twice your age at the time. So when it came out, the marketing for that also was like, it blew me away, because it was like, it definitely posited itself as something that had actually happened. And we were seeing the actual footage of what happened to these people when they went into the woods, going after the legend of this witch. And like you said, the internet was not how it is today, where we are oversaturated with information.
Right.
Like we have too much information now that when you're looking for something, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack now. When in 99, when this came out, you were still looking for the haystack.
Yep.
You couldn't find even the haystack to find the needle. And so getting any kind of information on anything was next to impossible, because it wasn't yet there. Unless you happened to be on AOL, which was the big service at the time. If you were connecting through anything other than AOL, it was a wasteland out there. It was nothing but GeoCities. and weird forums, like, and I say this and I say this as a person who participated in such forums and had a GeoCities page, and the Blair Witch was a phenomenon on a par that you can't nobody understands it today. Everybody does not understand. Really, they go back and watch Blair Witch now, and they're like, but why is this scary? Because like when you watch it from that perspective, because I love Blair Witch, but when you watch it from that perspective of like somebody who wasn't a part of that, then you're kind of like, yeah, but why was this such a big thing? And it's like, because we all thought it was real. Like, I knew it wasn't real, but you still go into it going,
you kind of feel like it might
be. Yeah.
And their IMDb pages like said they were missing or deceased, and you're just, even if you know it's not real, you're like, well, how much do I know for sure? Yeah.
Well, and the funny thing is, all three of the actors, like one of them has gone on to do a little bit more. One of the guys, I can't think of his name.
Yeah, the guy who plays Josh. Yeah. He's actually in Unsane.
Oh, okay.
That came out a few years ago.
He's done quite a bit, but the other two, Heather and the other one, they did a few things here and there, but they very light since then. And so that kind of adds to it. And even the filmmakers haven't done a lot since then. So it's like they just took this one thing and then just kind of rode off into the sunset, and that kind of added to it.
Yes.
And then surrounding that movie, we had The Curse of the Blair Witch, which was a faux documentary about.
Just got chills.
No, it's like so good. Like I did too, because it was so good. Like you get this history of everything, and that was the important part of, I think, that helped me embrace it more than maybe other people did since then, is because I think you need that Curse of the Blair Witch, that aspect of it, that to understand the backstory, the Rustin Parr stuff, the Ellie Kedward, the, all that stuff that goes into what all that, like what the movie itself means. Like they tell you a little bit about that. She goes into the history of it as, in the beginning, but you kind of lose that once they're in the woods and they're not really focusing on that anymore. And you're just kind of like, wait, what's going on again? And so I think that, and it was something for me too, that I liked it. I enjoyed it. And I really liked the surrounding stuff. Cause I got like the Curse of the Blair Witch. And then there was a book called the Blair Witch Dossier. And that had all the like police material, all and stuff that surrounded the case of searching for these kids and everything that came up after they found the videos and everything else, and which added a whole nother layer to things that made it even creepier. And
I don't think I've ever had my hands on that. I'm aware of it.
It's so good.
But
yeah. I don't have my copy. I don't have my copy anymore. I got lost in a move somewhere along the way. And but it was really good because it had a lot of that other side of the background that you don't get in either of those other two things. They created a very rich mythology for this little scrappy movie that did like broke records. I mean, it's still right. In terms of things, is the most successful independent film ever made. But yeah, all that added to it for me. But even still, there was a point where I enjoyed the movie, but the movie itself didn't creep me out until. So this is the really funny thing. So I think maybe a year later, Cartoon Network was doing a Scooby-Doo marathon all weekend long.
Okay.
And they did these little interstitials called the Scooby-Doo Project. And what they did was they had animated, the animated characters and stuff in like a live action setting. And so the Scooby Gang was going out into the woods and trying to get to some house out in the woods. And they were talking to real people. And they got to a house and they started running around and, somebody was chasing them, some like prospector guy or something like that. It was stupid. But then at one point, Shaggy's standing in the corner, like the one guy was in the end. He's like, I'm scared, man. And I don't know, something clicked at that moment and it freaked me out. And everything just clicked into place for me. And I was like, oh my God, the Blair Witch is creepier than I thought.
It's so creepy.
It's so
creepy. And on the Blu-ray, they have a few alternate endings that they shot.
I need to get that.
And they're all sort of the same thing, but some of them are like, instead of him staring at the corner, he's like floating or he's hanging, or I think one he's looking at you. They definitely picked the right one. Like,
well, because it ties into the whole Rustin Parr thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's something that, again, that you forget midway through because of all the tenseness of them going through the woods and getting lost and everything. And then you get to the house and you forget that moment where they discuss what happened with Rustin Parr and how he put a kid in the corner while he was killing the other one. Yep. And so you're just like, when you first see him, you're like, wait, why is he just standing in the corner? What's going on? And then like she gets knocked out and then the movie ends.
Brain. Yes.
Yeah. And then like I said, it wasn't until later that I was like, oh my God. It was like, that's what it was. So, because they were in his house that shouldn't have been there. It burned down.
Shouldn't have been there. Yep.
Yeah.
But the children's handprints were everywhere. And if I could just geek out about one more thing.
Yeah.
The sound design when they're in the house is absolutely out of this world. Like it's so hollowness. Disorienting. Yeah. And so they each have a camera, but only one of the cameras records sound.
Yes.
And so you're hearing it way off in the distance. But she's in the distance, but she's yelling right here, but you're hearing her on that camera that's over there. And I didn't understand all of that the first time I saw it. I just knew that it was this crazy, weird experience that I didn't know what was going on. And that adds to the tension and the fear. And it's just so perfect.
No, they yeah. And I think that's the other thing too, is like, I think that so many found footage movies are, they're trying to do their own thing, but they're also trying to find that combination of what Blair Witch did in terms of things. I'm kind of glad I didn't see it in theaters because I didn't end up getting to see it until it came out on video. But people complained about it being so jerky in the theater that it was making people sick.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I could see that when I watched it on TV. But on TV, either they reduced that a little bit, or it just wasn't as bad because it was on a much smaller screen.
Yeah.
Because in '99 we had like maybe 32-inch, if that.
Right.
So
yes.
But yeah, no, but it's such a good movie. I know we completely derailed off the other topic, but I definitely want to talk a little bit about Blair Witch with you.
Yeah, well, and all you got to do is say Blair Witch, and then I'll just be going for a while. So like,
okay, so now here's the real question: are you a fan of Blair Witch 2?
The Book of Shadows.
Yes.
It's fine. It's a whole different thing than the first one, and it has a silliness to it that I enjoy. It doesn't have anything to do with my love for the Blair Witch Project,
right?
But it's fine.
Oh yeah. No, see, I enjoy. I haven't watched it in years. I need to rewatch it again. I need to watch the whole series again. I enjoyed the second one because it took the super meta approach to the first one. It took you out of that, like, instead of trying to follow it up with something that was similar, it went into this completely batshit like reality that was this super reality. And I find it really interesting that the guy who directed that, Joe Berlinger, he's the guy who he's done a lot. He mostly does documentaries. He did the series of documentaries on the kids in Tennessee. I can't remember what they're called.
Oh, the West Memphis 3?
The West Memphis 3, yeah.
So he did that documentary?
He did those documentaries, yeah.
Oh, snap. That's crazy. Yeah,
and he did the Ted Bundy tapes documentary on Netflix and
the
Ted Bundy movie on Netflix. So, yeah.
That's wild. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so he's been mostly a documentarian. He's definitely done a few regular movies, but yeah, previous to doing Blair Witch 2, he'd done the documentary on the West Memphis 3. So,
well, now I kind of I want to watch that with that in mind and see what that brings to Blair Witch 2.
Yeah. See, there you go. You learn something new every day.
I did. This was educational.
Right. That's what we try to do here, is educate people.
Yes.
But yeah, and then the more recent Blair Witch, I guess Adam Wingard directed that one. I wanted to like that one.
I wanted to like it.
Because the plot, the story behind it seems interesting. The brother of Heather goes to go find her and everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just doesn't connect. It just falls apart for me. Yeah.
I agree. I don't.
It's not a bad movie. It's just not a great movie. It's just not on that level. And so, yeah, it just doesn't work as well. I think it's a little too polished as part of the problem.
Exactly.
Blair Witch is so like scrappy because it's on like old cameras and stuff. And then what you got with this one was you got drones and cell phones and good digital.
Everybody has a GoPro and there's drones and everybody has a handheld. And it's like in the original The Blair Witch Project, there's 2 cameras. They're found. Someone cuts that footage together to make the Blair Witch Project. Right. Does their best to put it chronological. Okay, I'll buy it. Yeah. I do not buy that after they all went missing, all their GoPros, all their drones, all their everything else were found, and someone took the time to go through all that footage and cut it together. And I'm a little bit of a found footage like snob. So I really care when I'm watching a found footage movie, like, does it feel realistic that somebody would have found this footage and made this movie? Which is why anytime I'm watching a found footage movie and there's a camera in someone's shower, I'm immediately off it because I'm like, this is not real. Like nobody would put this in the movie. But anyway, that's a whole other podcast. But no, yeah. So the 2016 Blair Witch, love Adam Wingard, got no problem with him, but it did not feel like the sequel I wanted it to feel like, and it makes me sad. And I've even tried to rewatch it and tried to like it, and not for me.
Yeah. No, I felt the same way. It just felt a little too polished compared to the first one, and it tries a little too hard, I think, to capture that without doing the things that the first one did. And I think if you're going to connect it in that way, you either have to be Book of Shadows, where you don't do anything like it and just try to connect it in a more meta way, or you just leave it alone. You know? So
I agree.
So found footage, like what would give me a top 5 of your favorite.
Okay. Well, the Blair Witch Project.
Of course.
Paranormal Activity, Hell House LLC.
I need to see that one.
I really like this one called Butterfly Kisses. That I feel like, it's kind of a weird outlier.
Write that down.
But yeah, I love Butterfly Kisses. How many was that? Was that 4?
That's 4.
So, okay. There's this other one that I really liked called The Mirror that I don't see talked about a lot either. And it was really creepy. It's just 3 kids with a camera. They buy a mirror that's acting weird, and it goes from there. It's like really tight, well put together found footage.
Interesting.
Be My Cat, a film for Anne, is really creepy and unsettling.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah. Andre Tofi.
That one seemed like I'd heard of that one and like how weird it was, and I was like, I don't know if that one's for
weird.
Me.
It's so good though at what it does, because I had to stop it in the middle and Google, like, am I watching a real snuff film? Like, it scared the crap out of me in that way. So it's excellent at what it does.
That's funny.
And then Sandman is a movie I actually just wrote about, and it's S ampersand man, so it looks like S&M man, but it's called Sandman. It's half faux documentary and half like found footage style. The conceit is these filmmakers are going to make a documentary about extreme film, but then maybe one of the extreme filmmakers is taking it too far. That is an unsettling movie. Murder, Death, Koreatown is really good. I know we went past 5. I will stop listing them. I have on my Letterboxd, I have a list of my favorite found footage. So
I'll definitely check that out because I'm following you now.
Yes.
So
same.
Yeah. No, that's a good list. I'll definitely have to take a look at those and see if any of those pique my interest.
Yeah. Hell House LLC for sure. That one I feel like is well done enough that even if
I've
you don't
heard
like
very
found
good
footage,
things about that one. Yeah, I've heard very good things about that one. That one's easy to watch on Shudder. So
Yep.
Let me see. Do we have anything else to say about Taking of Deborah Logan, or
check my notes here?
The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
I think we covered everything that I wanted to. I was excited to talk about all what they had in common, and we covered a lot.
Yes. Yeah, there was surprisingly a lot more than I had originally thought of when I suggested Deborah Logan as pairing it with it. So I was actually pleasantly surprised at that.
Yes.
It gave us lots to talk about. All right. Well, where can people find you? And do you have anything else that we should be paying attention to?
Sure. So you can find me on Twitter at Ari_Hellraiser. And you can find me on Letterboxd at the same name, Ari Hellraiser. And you can check out my writing at Ghouls Magazine and also Moving Pictures Film Club. I might be guesting on some other podcasts coming up soon too, but I don't want to jinx it. So just watch my Twitter for those, I guess, when they come out. But yeah, you can find it all on my Twitter. It's all there. All
right. Sounds great. Well, thank you. I appreciate you joining me today. And
Yeah, thank you so much. This was wonderful. Anytime you want to have, another Blair Witch Project conversation or anything else, I can also go off about Saw. Just let me know. I'll come back.
I did see you mention that recently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But no, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on. Yeah.
Of course.
This was great. You're awesome, fun to talk to. So this will definitely be something I can I'll hit you up again on another one later.
That would be awesome.
Thanks again to Ariel for joining me for an awesome discussion on the Something of Someone movies. And the next episode, the kids will be back and we'll be discussing the Scream franchise. So join us next time. Until then, stay creepy.